Da-na-na-na-na-na-na.
All right, welcome to a special Pesach edition of Adult Beverages. So it's funny because we made a joke about this one. I think it was in the St. Patrick's Day episode. And then my parents were like, oh, that's a really good idea. And I was like, I was kind of kidding, but like, let's do it. So we're going to be doing Passover wine. And of course, there's no better example of this than Manischewitz. This is the gold standard of Passover wine. So I don't know how familiar you are with Passover, but
I'm vaguely familiar with Passover, but please tell me more. And I'm not familiar at all of what makes the wine different.
So that's perfect because there is a segment of the. So basically, Passover is the story of the Jews' exodus in Egypt, and there's a portion of so there's a Seder, which is like the meal, and actually the Last Supper was a Seder, tie in Easter since that's coming up also, and there's a portion of the Passover Seder where the youngest child will ask what is called the 4 questions. And the 4 questions start off with Manischewitz, which is, why is this night different than all other nights? So for our first of our 4 questions for Passover wine, why is this wine different from all other wines? So Passover wine, actually any kosher wine, is only ever touched by Sabbath-observant men from growth on the vine to the bottling. And, yeah, so only like Orthodox Jewish men, well, I guess it doesn't have to be Orthodox, men that observe the Sabbath, from grape to, so from soup to nuts, basically.
And the Sabbath is where you're not allowed to work, and that includes, for some people, like even using elevators and stuff, from the period of sundown on Friday to sunup on Saturday.
Sundown to sundown. So sundown Friday, sundown Saturday. Yeah, that's correct. And they'll hire what's called a goy, which is like somebody who will come and like turn on the lights for them, and like they've figured out this modern day cheat code. But that's a whole different ballgame. The other portion of what makes wine kosher for Passover is that so the other portion, the big portion of Passover is the Jews didn't have time to wait for their bread to rise when leaving Egypt, so that's why we eat matzah, and they eat all unleavened bread. So there is no chametz, is what it's referred to. So that's no grains such as wheat, barley, and then for Ashkenazi Jews, which is like Jews from like Europe, no kitniyot, which is beans, other legumes, and corn.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's very specific. Was corn, because I always thought corn was an American crop. So corn like not something that would have been on the menu then anyway?
I think corn is mostly for like Sephardic Jews, which are Jews from the Iberian Peninsula. And I think that's because there was a large trade of corn to once they started settling like the Americas, then I think corn started getting shipped back. The corn thing's not like a universal like truth for Passover.
That's the dog just burst into the room smelling the Manischewitz. Now, how do you pronounce it?
Manischewitz.
Manischewitz.
Yeah. So
good size bottle, that. How much does it retail for?
So how much do you think a bottle like this retails for?
I'm going to say $15.
Half of that. It was just about $8. So
well,
I think it's funny because it never occurred to me that I've obviously partook in Passover since I was a child, and it never occurred to me that the wine bottles at Passover are so much larger than a normal wine bottle. And then I was thinking about it more, and I don't know this definitively, but I'm sure that it has to do with the fact that during the course of the Seder, you drink 4 cups of wine. So over the course of it depends on how long your Seder is, but a Seder is usually with the meal, I would say probably between 2.5 hours. So you're drinking literally 4 cups. And it's part of the ceremony. There's breaks and it's actually a very important part of the the service. It makes it sound like Jews are just a bunch of tipplers where we're just drinking all the time. But there is a ceremony to it. There's also a portion where you take out 10 drops with your finger to represent the 10 plagues, and you're kind of spilling a portion of your joy and celebration. You're remembering, the Egyptians and their plight dealing with the plagues.
I did not know any of that.
Yeah. So there is a lot of symbolism. And question number 2, why is red wine traditionally used for Seders? That is because it is rabbinically thought to be more traditional. They didn't have white wine when the Jews were leaving Egypt, so they're like, well, this is probably what they drank. So that's why it's always red wine.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Now I know there's a sect of Christianity that tries to interpret manuscript to say that Jesus didn't drink alcohol and it was actually just grape juice, and that doesn't sound like it has much credibility to it.
So he's turning water into grape juice.
Yeah.
I hate to break it to you, grape juice probably fermented. All right. Anyway.
So it's got a ruby red color.
Yes.
Smells very sweet.
Mm-hmm. It is very sweet. That is probably, in all honesty, there's not a, I don't know, maybe my mom has never drank alcohol in her entire life. She just doesn't, I think she's tried it, just I don't really like the taste. Maybe she can tell the difference between wine and grape juice, but personally, I can't tell the difference.
That's the really interesting thing. So I know this is made with Concord grapes,
mm-hmm.
and I don't like grape juice. So when my kids have the grape juice boxes, I'm always like, ugh. And it has a very distinctive taste. Concord isn't a grape that's traditionally used for winemaking. I believe that when the Pilgrims came to America, they looked at there were so many grapes that they called this portion of New Jersey Vineland.
Yes.
And then they made the wine, and the wine was terrible.
Yeah.
And so Concord grapes are not generally used for making wine. This wine, I can taste that same flavor of my kids' juice boxes, which is Concord grapes. So it's
yeah, no, this is Passover wine is very sweet. It goes down very easy. But the other thing too is that it's not like it's a lower ABV.
It's 11%.
It's I think it's 11%.
Yeah.
I was surprised because I looked at it yesterday. I was like, oh, that's kind of high. Yeah, it's 11%. So that's like a standard wine.
It is. It's on the low end for wine, but it's definitely not unheard of. And you get 1.5 liters for $8.
Yeah.
At 11%.
Mm-hmm.
So if I ever become homeless, I am also becoming Jewish.
I gotta say, I went to when I went to buy the wine yesterday. The aisle was like I went to a casting call because everybody looked like I did, but 10 years older. So it was a bunch of middle-aged Jewish men. And I'm like, yeah, we're all here for the same reason. So question number 3. And I'm curious because you are a bit of a wine expert. I'm curious if you've ever heard this term before. Do you know what the term mavushal means?
No.
Okay. So, I wasn't sure because I think that this is primarily a Jewish wine thing, but mavushal literally means cooked, and it's wine that's been heated to the point that idol worshippers wouldn't use it for nefarious purposes. So Jews are very part of being Jewish is there's no false idols. If you've seen the Ten Commandments, they have, or if you're familiar with the story, there's the golden calf, and then while Moses is getting the commandments from Sinai, the Jews down below build the golden calf, and then they destroy it. And the whole thing is, you don't know what God looks like. You're not going to build a statue of God. You're not going to, build statues of people. And traditionally, there's not a lot of like real like iconography in Judaism. There's like a Star of David, but a lot of that stuff is kind of later on.
The complete opposite of Catholicism.
Right. So Mevushal wine is for wine that is being served to Jews by non-Jews. And the fear was that the non-Jews would use the wine in some sort of ceremonial idol worship. So what they would do is they would boil it so that, they wouldn't want to use it. So Mevushal wine is purposely made to taste terrible so that you wouldn't want to use it. And it's also so that it's like purer. So it's like you're boiling out the impurities of any like idolatry worshiping that's going on.
That's so very Jewish to like deliberately make your wine taste bad.
It's crazy. It was one of the, because I had heard the term before, and I knew that it was somewhat related to like kosher wine, but it's meant for like if you're having an Orthodox Jewish wedding catered by non-Jews, and you're afraid that the non-Jews are going to use it for some sort of nefarious
purposes.
I can't be associated with that, so time to boil the hell out of her wine.
Wow. So
yeah,
I swear solemnly, I'm not going to use this to ply some 21-year-old.
Well, that's good because it's not Mevushal. So.
Oh, in that case, I totally will.
Yeah, you can.
I mean, I would not buy this out of choice, but I have to admit, when I cook dinner tonight, this is going to go nicely with it.
Yeah. No, it's definitely good. I gotta say, like, I traditionally, like, there's a lot of, like, red meat in Jewish dinners, and, like, there's a lot of brisket. So this does pair very nice with a brisket. Although I don't know if, like, as much as I enjoy, like, a wine with dinner or, like, I'll drink, like, a beer with dinner, I don't think during the Seder I'm typically like drinking wine as I'm eating. I think I usually switch over to water and just kind of save it for like the ceremonial stuff.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and I think it's more just because I think like I know that I'm in store for like 4 glasses over the course of like an hour and a half, 2 hours. And I just don't want to like. I think one year I was like really just like, all right, I can do this. Like I can have wine, and I like got up from the table and I was like, holy shit, like this is really powerful.
Because it's deceptively sweet. I mean, it does taste like grape juice. So
yeah.
Well, I learned a lot.
Yeah, and I have one more for you.
Ooh.
So this is something that I was unaware of, and I thought that this was going to be the answer to the first question, but it is not. It's a separate question. Question number 4: is there yeast in my Passover wine? And the answer may shock people. The answer is yes, because so the whole thing is that yeast is like the rising agent, but yeast can be used if you're feeding the yeast, because yeast is the microscopic fungus. But if you feed the yeast something that's not if you feed the yeast a sugar that's not from a grain, then it's fine. So Passover wine yeast is used from molasses, not from wheat or barley or any of those other grains or like corn. So there is yeast in Passover wine, which I think most people are surprised about, because typically, like, I mean, my understanding, my rule of thumb as a kid was always like, doesn't have yeast in it, it's no good to drink. So that's why, like, there are certain beers. I think it's Schmaltz Brewing, which we did the
yes, the
pastrami. What was it?
The pastrami beer.
That's what it was. It was the pastrami Pilsner. Yes. They have a kosher Passover beer called Hebrew, and I'm sure that it's made from the same way.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's so. Well, I mean, this has been very, very educational to me because it's funny. Growing up in England, like I had pretty much no exposure to any culture except like upper middle class Christian Protestant. When I moved to America, the company I worked for was run by a Jewish guy, and he was like driving me to the apartment he'd rented, and he was like, "This is where we go to Temple," and I'm like, "Temple? What is Temple? Is it a nightclub or something?"
You're like Temple University?
Yeah. So, yeah, it's interesting getting some. I'm probably good now with my experience with Manischewitz. I mispronounced that again, didn't I? It's
yes.
Mana.
I will say it is difficult to pronounce, and even like because. So the other thing is that Hebrew is very similar to like there are certain like sounds and diphthongs in Hebrew that don't translate into English, like the ch sound, like Hanukkah is not like it's typically you'll see it as like a ch or an h, but that's not like really what the sound is. The sound is more of like a like from you. Honestly, you could probably do it because of German.
Yeah, because I know Yiddish and German are quite close, aren't they?
Yiddish and German are very close. Like I remember my grandmother used to say that she could, if somebody was speaking German to her very slowly, she could understand it because she understood Yiddish. There are certain words in German, like Kinder is the same. What else? I think what's another word that's like pretty. Oh, I was gonna, there's an Office reference. It's not PC, so I'm not going to use this one. But there's another one where Dwight in the Office, Dwight speaks German, and he'll say like his bestes Mensch, and that's very similar to like Mensch is like a good person. So yeah, this was definitely one of the most. I think we always have like a really good time filming. I think this was a really fun episode for me to do the research into. I think we had like because we obviously have like the 4 questions and all that, but I think it's also nice to like, talk about like culture and stuff. So
it's funny because there's that guy who does the unemployed wine guy who probably drink this and make all sorts of funny jokes about how terrible it is. But actually, I find it really interesting. I will drink a lot of stuff I don't personally enjoy if it has some kind of. I went out with Lauren the other night to Clyde's, and I had a Vespa Martini, which is like the James Bond Martini, which he invented without tasting it. And then a couple of years later, he said he found it rather unpalatable. So it's not something I enjoy, but I enjoyed the story behind it. And so it's kind of that's alcohol is.
Now, did he name it Vespa after? We're gonna like really go off on a tangent. We were so good with staying on topic, but now I got to ask about the Vespa Martini.
Well, you know what? Okay, maybe we should do an episode in which we make a Vespa Martini.
Okay, that's a good staying on track.
Yeah, I'm getting there. There. That could be quite fun. But this gives me an appreciation for it, and I think that's it. I remember I never liked Rioja wine until I went to Rioja and actually saw it being made, and now I love it. And so I probably will never ever have another bottle of this in the house again, but I appreciate it and respect it.
Yeah. And
and it has been actually really fascinating to find out what's behind it.
Yeah, no, this was a good episode. Feel free to share, give out the information. That's why we're doing this. And don't forget to hit like and subscribe. And also, we forgot to promote this on our last video. If you go to beerthrone.com, you can get awesome glasses like this one for 10% off by using our code ADBEV. Yes, and we'll post a link to that in the in the description. And they have
we're going to try something clever with the glasses at some point, aren't we?
You definitely will. So, I actually should have brought one of those glasses over to you yesterday, but say love me. So, don't forget to check that out. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe, and look out for all of our future episodes where we delve into Vespa Martinis and other such drinks.
Love it.